Police officers, what stupid things have people nervously said around you and instantly regretted? Not a police officer, but the person who nervously said something stupid. I was 16, super naive, and driving home after a late night studying with my friends at Barnes & Noble. Taking back roads home, it's dark and no one else is out, so I roll through a stop sign. Police officer turns on his lights and pulls me over. He asked me if I'd been drinking. Shocked, I said, "Excuse me, officer, I'm 16, that's illegal." Made me get out and do the whole breathalyzer and coordination tests, rigmarole. Probably thought I was being a little crap, but I honestly didn't realize anyone my age actually drank. I got off with a warning. Ha! Classic case of oversharing while under pressure. Story 2. Ex-NSW police officer in Australia. To give you guys some background, NSW police can pull people over if they feel like it for a random breath test, an RBT. No reason is required. You're not allowed to search the car without reasonable suspicion that they have committed an offense, though, so sometimes you just ask some questions to see if they break, or more just for fun. One really sticks out to me. I pulled over a car full of young blokes, all about 17. The driver is super nervous. I mean, nervous enough that he was visibly shaking. I asked the kid if he had anything to drink. He squeaked, "No." I could smell something as soon as he rolled down the window. This was plenty for me to search the vehicle, but I could tell the driver wasn't, but his 3 mates were. I was going to have to leave it alone. He passed the breatho, so I asked him if he had any substance in the car. He responds, "Not anymore." Well, mate. Ended up getting him out of the car and giving him some advice on talking to police. Usually, just don't. If you've done something stupid, give one-word answers and don't admit to anything. And don't drive around carloads of spiked dudes. One will say something dumb eventually. He very nervously thanked me, then very nervously let out a loud fart. I swear he was about to cry. Poor guy. Story 3. Not an officer, but the idiot in the situation. I was pulled over a few months ago, leaving a popular restaurant and bar in a neighboring town. Had one beer and was completely fine. I was in a rental car and didn't know it didn't have automatic headlights like my car. Odd to me because my car is from the 90s and this car was brand new. So it's about 11 p.m. and I'm at a stoplight across from an officer who flashes his lights at me. Well, the light had changed, so I thought he just wanted me to go ahead and turn, so I did, and he immediately pulled me over. Convo from there. Officer, "Son, do you know why I pulled you over?" Me, "No, sir." Officer, "I flashed my lights at you to turn yours on and you didn't." Me, "Oh, I'm sorry, officer. Here's my license." Officer, "Okay, be right back. Just have to mark down that I stopped you." He then showed me how to turn the lights on because I hadn't the slightest idea. Me, "No problem, officer. Just so you know, though, this totally isn't my car." Officer stops and looks at me. What now?" Me, "Oh, no, not like that. It's a rental." Holds rental papers out the window. Like I didn't steal it or anything. Just thought you should know. And no one has ever looked at me like I was so stupid in my life. Story 4. Pulled over a vehicle driving suspiciously slow and swerving on the highway late at night. Walking up to the car, I saw the driver reaching under the seat. I knocked on the window. "Do you know why I pulled you over, sir?" I asked. "I don't know. Speeding?" he replied. "No. Do you know how fast you were driving?" No. 15 miles per hour. "Oh, well, I wasn't speeding," he said. "Yes, sir, but you crossed the center line multiple times and it seemed like you were looking for something." He gave me a big smile, clearly under the influence. "Yeah, I dropped my grass," he mumbled. Regret washed over his face instantly. I couldn't help but laugh. "Get out of the car, please." He stepped out. "Any other substance in the vehicle?" I asked. "No, sir," he said. "What about that bag on the passenger seat next to the bowl?" "Oh, crap, I forgot I left that there," he stammered. I was internally holding myself from laughter. I took his license. He was frickin' 17. "All right, buddy," I said. "Do you have your parents' phone number?" "Yeah, please don't call my parents," he pleaded. "I don't have a choice, bud. I'm not taking you to jail for grass. I'll let your parents handle it. Dump your grass in the ditch. Lol. Story 5. I pulled over a guy for some minor traffic offense who I knew had a twin brother. He gave me his name. I'd say it's Jeff. I decided to check the other twin's name as well. Boom, warrant. I knew he was lying to me, but I couldn't prove it. I chit-chatted casually for a few minutes and then asked him, "What's Jeff up to these days?" He answered and started telling me, and I said, "But I thought you were Jeff." He didn't even try to get out of it at that point, admitted he wasn't Jeff, and went to jail. The annoying thing is that I later fell for this with another set of brothers and had to go back and arrest the kid the next day after he totally got the better of me. Story 6. I was passing a friend, being an idiot on a 4-lane road. Out of nowhere, this other car jumped out in front of me and caused me to have to press it and swerve over into the other lane and pass the dude who'd pulled out. narrowly avoiding clipping my friend's car, who wasn't as attentive to what was going on as I was. I saw the cop driving the opposite way, but didn't even get to hesitate and still pulled off the timing I needed to. The cop stops, turns around in the middle of the road, and turns on his lights. I saw him turn around and was already pulled over before he had even turned his lights on. I was then parked at a gas station. He says, "What were you doing?" "I was trying to avoid a collision, sir." "You were driving recklessly. Don't give me that BS. "Sir, if I had not swerved, I wouldn't be talking to you right now. That other car absolutely pulled out in front of me without checking." Can't say for sure what happened because I didn't see it, but I don't ever want to see you driving like that again. Then, somewhere in my brain, the next logical thing for me to say was, "Well, I was speeding." "What the hell did you just say?" was my reaction to myself. The cop, completely perplexed by my confession, looked at me with his head to the side, not unlike a dog that's trying to figure out what the baby talk noises you're making are supposed to mean. He then turned around, sat down in his cruiser, and drove away. I then sat there, staring blankly out the window, people walking past me going into the station, and I could only put my head down on the steering wheel like the stupid person that I am. Story 7. Close enough. A friend of mine is a cop, and the first time he pulled anyone over, it was a couple of teenagers in the car. My buddy says to them, jokingly, "All right, guys, where are you hiding the grass?" They were instantly terrified, so they opened the middle console and handed him the grass. He couldn't believe it and said he honestly felt really bad because at that point he had no choice but to write them up. Story 8. I work at a criminal defense firm. People always say they've had 2 drinks when they're caught intoxicated driving, as if having 1 or 3 would make a difference. For some reason, it's a go-to line. The correct answer is, "Am I being detained and may I call my attorney?" When asked to do all the tests for the DUI, people literally say, "I couldn't do this if I were sober." All the time. Heck, you can tell them you have bad balance, a bad knee, don't know how to count, can't understand commands because you never went to school. But don't use the excuse that you're not sober and that's complicating things. When you run, fight, or spit, or endanger a cop or the public in any way while you're getting arrested, you get more crimes added onto your first one. Now your misdemeanor has turned into a felony because for some reason you thought you would be the only person ever to outrun a cop. I'm telling you, out of a million criminals, about 0.00001% don't get found. The rest need attorneys. When you are caught, you assume that the cops are your friends, and if you just tell the truth, everything will be okay. The cops are wonderful people, but their job is to investigate and solve crimes. And if you are in their custody, they think you have committed a crime. They are already looking to trip you up with interrogation. This is what they get paid to do. The only thing you should talk to a cop about if you are in handcuffs or in custody is the weather, the condition of the roads, and most importantly, may I please see an attorney? Even the cheapest attorney on earth who doesn't know their back from their elbow can help you when you haven't screwed your case at the start. Once you do, you're looking at paying a lot to get out of something you just extra screwed up. Story 9. Late to the party, but here's one of many. I pulled over a woman for speeding one night, 45-ish miles per hour in a 30-mile-per-hour zone on a gorgeous spring night with pedestrians everywhere. When I asked her if she knew she was speeding, she said that she did. She was having brake problems and was rushing to get to the car to her friend's shop. The regret was obvious when I pointed out that if her brakes didn't work correctly, perhaps slower would have been the better option. Story 10. Sheriff's deputy here. I work in my jail's booking facility and deal 100% with freshly arrested prisoners. For every person who was charged and arrested for a crime that night, new charge, not a warrant, they have to go see probable cause court. This happens within a few hours of being booked in, and basically the judge reviews the facts and A, determines if there are enough probable cause to charge them, and B, raise or lowers their bond. If no PC is found, the case is dismissed and they're immediately released. So one day, this young kid, around 17 or 18, was arrested on the street after several homeowners reported suspicious behavior near their house. The patrol officers showed up and questioned him. While that was happening, one officer noticed a backpack laying down near a tree about 50 feet away. Upon searching the bag, he found all kinds of substances. At this point, the officer arrested him for possession of a controlled substance and brought him to jail, $20,000 bond right there. Once this prisoner gets in front of the probable cause judge, the judge reads the case and motions to dismiss it because the kid wasn't seen by the officers with the bag. He was only in the general vicinity of it, which isn't a crime and isn't possession necessarily. Once the judge tells the kid he's going to be released on no PC, the kid asks how long that will take, where he's being released to, and if he can get his backpack back. Read that last part again. He asked if he could get his backpack back, but the only backpack that was on him was the backpack full of substance. He didn't come in with a different backpack on his back. So the judge calls him back and asks him what he said, and the kid repeats himself verbatim, again asking if he'll get his backpack back. To keep a long story short, the judge decided to not dismiss the case and instead charged him with the possession charge that he was brought in on. Ay, 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 talk about a duh moment. That kid might be a criminal mastermind in another reality, but his lawyer skills need some work. Story 11. My brother was caught with a decent amount of grass in middle school. Told the officer, I wasn't going to smoke it, I was just going to sell it. Now that was a distribution charge instead of simple possession. He was never actually charged with anything, though. The officer felt bad for him, I think. Story 12. Prefacing with not a police officer, was the driver, yada, yada, yada. Still, this story is pretty damn dumb. So, my best friend was having a nervous breakdown in Portland, and at the time I lived in Maryville, 30 minutes north of Seattle, and she called me at 7 p.m. to tell me of this. So, of course, I take off and go to meet her, and I'm freaking out internally. I don't want her to end herself or anything, but I am so hungry. So I stopped to get a couple tacos at a nearby Taco Bell before hitting the road for real. So I'm trying to eat them on the freeway when around Everett I get pulled over. I'd been swerving because my wheel and tire alignment had been off for a while, and normally with two hands it was fine, but trying to eat vaguely Mexican food in one hand was not, so the cop had rightful suspicion to think I was intoxicated. Luckily for me, I am a very, very unassuming white girl. Unluckily, I have really, really bad anxiety around authority, and most of all, I was scared my best friend may hurt herself. So, in a gruff voice, he asks me if I've been drinking, and I start sobbing grossly with snot and everything, and say nearly intelligibly, I'm sorry, sir, I tried to eat tacos and I failed. Maybe that's when he saw the Taco Bell bag, or maybe he saw me and gave me a break, but he let me go with a stern warning not to eat behind the wheel. And I didn't touch the tacos again until I was in Portland with my best friend. She's good now, though. Story 13. When I was a teacher, I stood with Officer S, the school police officer, in the morning out near the bus lanes to greet students. One morning, a mom drove up to drop her child off, rolled down the passenger side window, and called out to Officer S, if you get a call about a break-in on Smith Street, don't worry about it, it was just me. Then proceeded to roll up the window and try to drive away while he ran after her, shouting, excuse me, ma'am, I need to talk to you. And I laughed my back off. Story 14. I have a bunch. My favorites are people's tells, where their body indicates they were lying. It's not verbal nervousness technically, but I still think it counts. Guy was pulled over for no headlights on at night. Car has an overwhelming odor of grass. I asked him if there were any weapons in the car. No. I asked him if he had any drinks tonight. No. Is there any grass in the car? In an extremely high pitch. No. Found a bowl and a little bit of grass, gave a warning. Intoxicated guy who said, I'm done, to every single question I asked him in relation to him being DUI. Another guy who wasn't intoxicated but had a beer or two and freaked out and began crying when I pulled him over. He called his girlfriend and began telling her, I'm going to jail, babe. I love you, baby. I'm going to jail. He performed a SFST horribly, so I thought he was intoxicated. After he was arrested, he calmed down. He seemed very sober. Did the breath test and blew a 0.03. I gave him a ride home and allowed his girlfriend to make fun of him. Story 15. Had a friend who had just gotten her license and was pulled over for RBT, and she was incredibly nervous, only because it was all new to her. The officer held out the breathalyzer and said, count to 10. She goes, yep, and then is silent for a bit before the officer has to say, out loud, please, ma'am. Oh, right, sorry. 1, 2. Story 16. Used to go on a few ride-alongs for a college course. Got a call about someone hiding under vehicles. We rolled up, sure as hell saw someone lying under a Bronco. We called him out and told us someone was chasing him through the neighborhood. Yeah, okay. Anyway, halfway through his story, a car rolls by and half a handful of guys in it stare at him and us. So we know it's probably true. As the cop was talking to the kid, he wanted to just turn him over to his family and get on about the day. He asked this kid as a formality, do you have anything on you? Kid says, well, I have a bag of grass in my pocket. Huh? So the obvious follow-up question is, and is that why you're being followed? Kid says yes, that he stole it. At this point, the officer and I are exchanging incredulous looks, so yeah, that was kind of stupid of him. Now the cop really just wants to get on with his day, so he offers the kid to arrest and release him, just confiscate the grass, seriously, it was like a good pound or so, and release this kid to his parents. So we take him into custody and to where this kid says is home. Kid walks through the front door and says to the woman cooking in the kitchen, hi, Mom, to which she replies, what do you mean, Mom? I've never seen a grown man express the, holy hell, are you freaking kidding me? Look like this officer at that exact moment. Ending to the story, we arrest the kid, bring him down to juvie, and turn in the evidence. That officer seriously wanted to just wash his hands of this minor, to him, offense of possession with enough to qualify for intent to distribute of just grass. But no, this kid had to screw it all up and make it bad for himself. So those are the dumbest nervous things I've seen, and he may not have instantly regretted it, but it came around pretty quick. Story 17. My mother is a police officer. She once stopped a woman who was on her phone while driving and doing something else as well. I don't know what exactly, smoking a cigarette or something. Well, the woman saw them, panicked, and intended to throw out her cigarette and put the phone away. Did it the other way around, threw the phone out the window. Story 18. My sibling's car broke down on the side of the road and was parked maybe 3 feet off the curb on a side street, one that was just residential and had practically no traffic. A cop saw it and called my sister, telling her if we didn't come and move it, he was going to tow it. My sister didn't have a vehicle, of course, because it was broken down, so I had to go deal with it. I showed up, and the plan was to push it, but then I realized I didn't have the keys and it was locked. The officer was making a huge deal about it and being a schmuck, so I said, well, since this is such a major safety hazard, we can just lift the back end up and move it closer to the curb. The front end was already close enough, and it was a light car. The officer got mad and started threatening me with all sorts of citations and stuff. So then he made me drive the half hour to go get the keys. Meanwhile, the whole time I was supposed to be at work. When we finally got done moving it, I asked for his name and badge number, and he wasn't impressed. When I left, he followed me for a mile or two, tailgating me to try to scare me or something. Story 19. Not a cop, but my friend told me this one. Pulled a guy over late one night. His car reeked of grass. My friend said it was no big deal. He just wanted to make sure the guy was safe to drive. Here's where things get a little weird. Guy has his hands on the steering wheel, aka in sight, and is very, very polite, but forgot to turn down his music. My friend said it was like being in the front row at a concert. Told the guy to turn down his music, and no kidding, the guy, instead of turning down his music, just changed it to the local college station. Turns out he was on something else and smoking and thought changing it to the right station would compensate for the lack of nocturnal noises. Story 20. Not a cop, and I barely said one word, but I still felt instant regret. In high school, my friends and I only had our third period class every other day. On the days we didn't have it, we'd drive to go eat somewhere and just come back in time for fourth period. We'd usually argue over who would drive and just force a certain person pretty much every time. Him being already annoyed he has to drive all the time and also having 4 obnoxious teenagers in his car, he was easily agitated and would lock the windows if we ever tried to roll them down. It got to a point where the windows would just stay locked, and subconsciously we kind of just knew the windows were not an option. Well, one day on the way back for our final class, we got pulled over. The officer wanted the back window rolled down for whatever reason. He looked at me through the window and asked, "Son, can you roll down the window?" At which point my response was to just laugh because somehow, subconsciously, rolling down the window was so forbidden. I didn't even think it was an option at that point, I guess. My friend then rolled down the window and the cop asked if I was on stuff, which I replied with, "No." Of course, accompanied by totally unnecessary laughter. He somehow believed me, but I felt like an idiot ever since. Story 21. Pulled a guy over on suspicion of driving while intoxicated. We didn't have an ESD, a breathalyzer, but he was so intoxicated he was adamant that my radio was a breathalyzer. Anyway, whilst we were waiting, he started to get really agitated as he thought we were up to something. He was begging to have a go on the breathalyzer, the radio. Eventually, I let him blow into the radio antenna and told him it was faulty and we had to wait for another. Unsurprisingly, he failed and got arrested. Not quite what you asked for, but it still makes me chuckle. And if you're chuckling from some of these stories and enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos just like this. Story 22. I've been pulled over numerous times. I don't like speed limits, so normally it's just me going over 10, 15 over. Because my daily is a 3 to 4 ton 4x4 truck, I generally pull very far over on the shoulder. And if the officer has less to worry about people sideswiping him, or I completely exit the highway and I pull into a parking lot. I try to bring up something to the effect that they need a pullover lane that makes it safer for the officer in conversation, and tell him it's just too darn unsafe for them out here. I also don't deny I was speeding. 9 out of 10 times this tactic gets me off with a warning. Or there was the one time I had an officer laugh. For backstory, I'll tell you I had been out of town working for 2 weeks. It was hell and I had pulled some very long hours. The officer walks up, asks me if I know why I was pulled over, and I say, "Sure, I was speeding. To be honest, officer, and no disrespect, but I've got a lot of problems and right now money ain't one of them. I haven't seen my wife and kids in 2 weeks and I just want to get home and see them." He laughed, took my info, came back and told me, "I'm letting you off with a warning. Just slow it down so you can make it home to see them." I thanked him and told him to be safe out here and we parted ways. Cops are people too. Some are schmucks and some are decent people you'd be able to have a beer with. All right, thanks, guys. Be safe out there because there's a lot of crazy in this world. Story 23. In law enforcement, but not a regular cop, middle of search warrant looking for a bloke, lots of convictions in the past. Found a still burning thing in the ashtray in the living room, but no sign of the guy in the house. I am 99% sure he is in the roof cavity. I announced to my partner, I think he's up there. Should we look? Suddenly, the ceiling starts talking. Hear the softest, no, hehehe. Crap, can they hear me? Nah, it's all good. So my partner said, nah, man, I didn't hear that guy say we shouldn't look up there. Ceiling replies with, sweet, I knew they wouldn't find me. Needless to say, we looked and pulled a very, very spiked guy out from under the insulation vents. Story 24. Not a cop, but a friend of mine had to visit the USA for business-related reasons. We are Germans. And when he came back, he had a story to tell. First, he didn't want to go to the USA, but had to. His boss insisted. So he was angry all the time over there. Girlfriends and his dad's birthday was in the 2 weeks he was there. Now, the highway rules in Germany are different, and one day, girlfriend's birthday, he rushed home and forgot that he wasn't in Germany, and he got pulled over because of speeding and overtaking a police car. So he tried to talk himself out of speeding like, I'm German, and I forgot that I drive here in miles per hour, not in kilometers. Well, the cop didn't buy it, and the stress began. Soon, my friend snapped and yelled something like, it's not my fault that your Stone Age country uses that stupid measurement system. I mean, miles, feet, inches, Fahrenheit. How messed up is this country? He told us that the cop arrested him, also called backup. Friend spent 2 nights in jail, missed girlfriend's birthday and the appointment why his boss sent him to the USA. Of course, he got fired for that. He is a nice guy, but sometimes he's also an idiot. Story 25. My father was a cop for many years, and one of his favorite arrest stories was when he pulled someone over for a simple traffic violation. I think he didn't do a full stop for a stop sign. When my father asked, do you know why I pulled you over? The gentleman responded, yeah, it's because of all the substances in the trunk. After my father read him his rights and was putting him in the back of his car, my dad asked, just out of curiosity, how did you know I knew you had substance in the back? The man ushered to the radar detector in the front and said, I saw the detector on the dash and I knew you had me. My father still laughs about this one 20 years later. Story 26. The stupid one was me. I was flying from Wichita home on an international flight. The gate, my mom called me and yelled at me. She can get these tantrums, and she was yelling so loud I could see people looking at me thinking, poor girl. So I was shaken by this, especially since I got yelled at for something I didn't do and I was unable to fix at the moment. An officer saw me and I guess he figured something was up. He asked me to step away with him. He started asking all these questions, which I had a hard time answering because I was near crying. He asked why I was so nervous, and I replied, I don't want to give you a wrong answer. Then he goes, can I see some ID? And I replied, which one do you want? I moved out of my birth country in my teen years, so I have several nationalities. He looks at me going, what the hell? He looks at my passport, which has stamps from short stays with spans of 6 months in between. I'm thinking at this point he thought I was a mule or something. Ma'am, please open your bag. I did. Am I going to find anything illegal in here? And I went, depends on what's illegal in this country. Seriously, I wasn't trying to be a schmuck, but in retrospect, I did ask for it. He found nothing in my bag and let me go, but he did keep an eye on me until we boarded the plane. Story 27. Man was roughened unconscious by 3 men. I caught one of them escaping on foot, but he vigorously denied any knowledge of any incident. Another officer had collared someone he thought might also be involved, but had little evidence other than the fact he was running away and couldn't really account for his presence. The other prisoner was being taken to a cell just as I walked into custody with mine. My prisoner looked at him and immediately yelled, Matt has got nothing to do with this. You should let him go. He wasn't even there. A+ for friend loyalty. Pretty much a F- if you could get one for avoiding self-incrimination. Story 28. Not a cop, but I was pretty lucky. I used to work late at a hotel bar. I finished about 3 a.m. and was en route home quite quickly as the roads were empty. I reached a roundabout and came to a stop as I could see it was empty before I arrived. About 2 miles later, a police car appears behind me and flashes me to the side of the road. I hadn't actually done anything wrong, so I got out of the car with a bit of stink face on. He explains he'd seen me drive out the roundabout a bit fast and assumed it was intoxicated confidence. So he asked me to do a breathalyzer test. I do it, and as we stand the 5 or so seconds for it to beep, I realized I've had 1 drink at the end of my shift while cleaning down. Not enough to put me over the limit, but enough to be registered after me having said, I've had nothing to drink this evening. So I let out a massive sigh. The officer then looks at me and says, got something to add? I then sort of panicked and rather than admit my mistake, double down and say, no, it's just freezing and I've worked a 12-hour shift at Christmas and I'm back there in less than 8 hours and now some idiots are pulling me over despite me doing nothing wrong. He shoots me an eyebrow like, "Oh, really? You've got guts, haven't you?" I then realize I've called him an idiot unintentionally, just as he's about to call me out on a lie. So I decided, screw it. I actually just remembered a second ago when I sighed. I've had one drink when finished, hence why I just said the stupid crap. He laughs, explains that he'd just been warned of some drivers leaving a rural nightclub that were definitely over the limit in a car that matched my description heading the same route. As if by magic, a car's headlights appear down the same road, see me pulled over next to a police car and decelerate and hastily try to make a left turn before passing us. They wouldn't have been suspicious if they'd carried on, but the sound of a car braking hard and then, but only then, indicating left and quickly turning. The police officer wishes me a Merry Christmas, jumps in the car and pulls a U-E to catch back up with the clearly steaming driver. I'd actually had 2 drinks and was probably over the limit anyways. A punter had also bought me one, the other was put in my hand by a manager. Lucked out that night in multiple ways. Story 29. I got hit head on by an intoxicated driver years ago in front of a rural truck stop. Dude was out of his car and getting coffee in the diner practically before his car stopped moving. Insanely quick. He stays in there while other drivers are trying to get me out of my truck, jam door. I'm wounded from several different places, crying, scared, etc. Finally, I'm tucked away in the ambulance while Mr. Screwhead is being pushed into the cruiser. He asks the officer if I'm okay, angered the cop off. He shouted that it would have been nice to find that out before he ran into the diner and how he's not falling for the sudden nice guy crap. It made me laugh through my tears. To add, I was 19 and I'm now 44. I've had back surgery related to this accident and will always have back problems due to it. He caused me lifelong medical issues and couldn't even be bothered to stick around. I hope he got cirrhosis. Story 30. Not a police officer, but one of the folks who freak out. One time I was speeding in a residential area and really had no idea. I was a brand new driver and really used to driving my beater car that creaked and struggled anytime I went over 35, but I'd borrowed a friend's car because my beater was in the shop and I was going 40 in a 25 zone. I started crying and freaking out, trying to explain how I'm used to my crappy car and I don't know how to drive cars that aren't crap, and oh my god, thank you so much for stopping me. Oh my god, I could have hit someone's cat or something. She took pity on me and wrote it up as going 30. P.S. Crying and freaking out is basically my natural state of being, especially if I'm being pulled over. Officers are usually okay with that once I explain I have an anxiety disorder and ask permission to take one of my anxiety pills, which I always have in my purse, because I assume they'll think it's weird if I just pop a pill right in front of them. And then I feel bad because I can't just start driving until I've calmed down because that's not safe and they have to just wait there until I do because they can't just leave me on the side of the road. I'm positive that pulling me over ruins a cop's day because it takes like an hour of their time and I'm just sobbing and apologizing and hyperventilating and generally making them feel awkward. But I've only ever gotten that one ticket despite being pulled over probably 8 or 10 times in my life. So it's basically a superpower. Be so screwed up, cops don't want to kick you when you're down. Also, because I'm white, female, and little, I'm not blind to my own privilege here. Story 31. Not a cop, just dumb kid. In 99, after Phantom Menace came out, I thought Jar Jar Binks had the funniest way of talking. My family and I spent part of the summer in Mexico visiting family. On our way back at the border, the cops there asked each of us kids if we were American citizens, and everyone said yes except me. I said something along the lines of, "Misa American," all exaggerated because I thought it was funny. We ended up sitting on the side of the road in 100-something degree heat while they tore apart everything packed in the back of the truck. My mom was sitting with all 4 of us girls and holding my 6-month-old brother and pinching the crap out the back of my arm. I still flinch when people touch the back of my arm. Story 32. Some years ago, I was in a suburb of Houston driving down a notorious stretch of highway known for its unsynchronized red lights. My 2003 Chevy Avalanche was having some issues with the dashboard randomly shutting down while the vehicle was on and moving. I had my iPhone set to a speedometer app sitting on my dash and noticed a city police officer in his cruiser next to me at a light. When it turned green, I slowly accelerated, trying to gauge traffic speed. The cop stayed slow, too, and no one wanted to pass him. After a short distance, he hit his lights and got behind me. First thought, there's no way I was speeding. This app had me at 40 and a 55. Second thought, I haven't had anything to drink. What the heck? Third thought, just be polite. Yes, no answers, etc. Once we pulled safely over, the officer walked up and said, "Good afternoon, sir. Do you know why I pulled you over?" "I don't, sir." "Your registration is out." "There's no way. I literally got that done last week." I'm in disbelief at this point. How petty. I'd sat through my registration renewal after having allowed it to expire, so I was certain. "I'm sorry, sir. The sticker is not current." Incredibly, I pointed to the sticker. "What does that say right there?" At this point, God bless the man, he started second-guessing himself. I think, yeah, it's this month, last year." I look and read it. Sure as hell, there it is, last year in the same month. Ah, crap. "Cop." "What?" Me? It's in my, in my center console. Cop. Ha! Literally, aha! Go ahead, grab that. Me. Damn, I'm sorry. Cop. It's all right. Let me run your license and everything. Be right back. He walked off, shaking his head. We had a good laugh about it, and he let me off with a verbal warning to get it fixed. He certainly didn't have to be so kind or patient, but I appreciated the hell out of it. Story 33. Once I pulled a woman over for speeding. Upon approaching the car, I noticed she had 4 young children in the car and none of them were secured in their seats, even though there were 3 car seats in the back, so I explained why she was stopped and inquired as to why none of the kids were belted in. Her response was, "I don't have time for that crap." "Yes, ma'am, I'll be right back with you." I went back to my unit and ran her information, noting that she had received a ticket the previous year for the same thing, just 1 child. Roger that. I wrote her for speeding and 4 citations for the unsecured kids, totaling approximately $900 in fines. If she had said they had unlatched to see the policeman or some other reasonable excuse and had them buckle up, I would have probably let her go with a warning. Buckle your kids in. Story 34. I watched a British true crime documentary a few weeks ago about the investigation of a missing persons report. When the report was made, the police went round to her bloke's house to make a few inquiries about it and have a look around the property. At this point, he wasn't a suspect, it was just routine. They asked him if they could have a look around, and he starts making excuses and asked if they could wait till tomorrow because the kids are in bed. The police are like, "We're trying to locate your missing wife. This is important, isn't it?" He gives in. Then they ask if they can have a look through his phone, and again he starts making excuses that he needs it because people are always trying to reach him or that Natalie might call. Again, the police are like, "Are you saying you're refusing to give us your phone?" So he's generally not cooperating and not giving straight answers. In front of him, an officer gets a call through on the radio. We don't hear what was said, could have been unrelated. And at this point, because of his continued non-cooperation, the police become suspicious that he's got something to hide. They place him under arrest, and in response to this, he says, "Have you found Natalie then?" Turns out he ended her a couple of nights ago and hid her in a forest. Story 35. Inadvertently, my friend did. We got pulled over for the plates being out of date, and the officer asked for all of our IDs. One of my friends didn't have his on him, so he gave all the information he could to help the officer search for him in the system. He ended this with the comment, "It's okay, I'm not an ex-terminator or anything." We found out that there had recently been a crime in the area where someone had been ended with either a shovel or an axe later that night. He never got called in for questioning and didn't get bothered by the officers, so no harm done. He still felt nervous afterward that he would end up as a suspect. We still gave him crap for it every so often. Story 36. This is, I think, about 3 years ago. Being 22 and being the smart stupid that I am, I got pulled over for speeding. 50 kilometers per hour over the speed limit. They take your driver's license here for that kind of violation. So the cop pulled me over on his bike. I already knew crap was about to happen. He shows me the radar and it says 130 where 80 was allowed. It kind of shocked me because I wasn't really aware of that kind of violation. I knew I was speeding, but with that margin? He then asked me, "You know what this means?" In my shock, I said, "Yeah, I'm lucky," with some stupid look on my face. I then immediately thought, well, that's not a smart thing to say against an officer of the law. He wasn't expecting that response either, I guess. He went like, why? Me, well, because there's a correction of 4 kilometers per hour. Then he said, yeah, but this kind of speed we don't want to see in an 80 zone. Me, yeah, I know. After this, it's not really interesting, but I felt like, oh God, why would you say that to an officer? Eventually, I didn't lose my DL because of the correction, but I still got a point on my DL and a ticket of €597. Story 37. I was the one who said the stupid thing. I was 16 and my friends and I were just driving around town. My friend S was driving and he didn't have a license, but my other friend C, who was in the passenger seat, did, but was letting S drive. Well, we got pulled over and S immediately jumps in the back and C jumps in the driver's seat. The cop comes up and asks for all of our IDs and I hand it over and say, "Are we getting searched?" The cop looks at me and says, "Now you are." So he gives all my friends a little pat and they walk to the squad car to wait. I try to follow, but he signals me to stay and makes me put my hands on the vehicle. I was a little nervous even though I didn't have anything on me. Well, he's making his way down and he's around my area and asks, "Anything sharp down here that might poke me?" And me, being a stupid teenager, says, "Well, if you keep touching like that, there might be, officer." Not even a chuckle from him, just my friends. We got off with the warning though. And if you liked any of these stories, here's more for you because YouTube thinks you're going to love this. I'll catch you in that video.